your nervous system, your voice operates best from a parasympathetic place. So we have fight, flight, freeze, or we have fight, flight, which is that like, okay, and we need that. We need it as humans. It's not good for us to live in that perpetually. And when we have anxiety disorders, we tend to stay in that like high alert. I got to defend myself. It's me against the world. It's not a safe place. You're not even if logically you know you're fine. Your body is like, whoa, what's coming? And everything we need to sing operates best from the rest, that just restored place of it's safe. I can let the armor down. I can open up. Let me share this with you, as opposed to it's me against you. You know, and you can even hear it if a common example of the nervous person asking their boss for a raise, like, I was I was thinking that I've been at this company for a while, and it's like if you've ever been really upset and feel like I don't have control of my voice, because everything is connected directly into your vocal cords, directly into your diaphragm. It's not the mind over here in the body. The mind and the body are inextricably linked. Yeah. And so when your nervous system is dysregulated, you can't possibly tap into the fullness of your voice. Doesn't mean you can't sing well at all, but you can't. That's why some people, back in my old days, I was signed to a big management team, and there was an artist who had to take a swig of something before she would get on stage. Yeah. And I'm not gonna say her name because she's a known person, but she would have to. But she would. It was the only way she could.
A lot of them do, Eric.
Yeah, or they would have to smoke something. And the thing is, I can't smoke because my voice is too heavy. It'll my range will go. You know. But I know people who feel like they got to get through it like that, and that's not a good long-term solution. And typically, it compounds because people need more and more of it over time. You know. So yeah, but this is an element that has really informed the technique that I teach, because it's very nervous system balancing as well as freeing to the voice, because you can't find vocal freedom with heightened anxiety perpetually, and I think singers need to talk about it more. People need to talk about it more. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right, because you know, it's so you know, and I have to say this, it's so crazy that we're talking about this, because even I have PTSD from my childhood. So let's go for the full diagnosis: bipolar type 1, PTSD from my childhood, and acute anxiety disorder. So there's a lot going on. I've had 16 years of therapy, and I also take medication. There have been some dietary changes. You know, I can't have certain things, and that's fine. But I always was able to deliver my voice or the vocals, because for me, the singing was the safe place I went to.
Yeah.
Being able to sing, I literally teleport myself out of whatever I was in. So that like it always became, and it was so crazy because sometimes, you know, some of the roughest times I've had here in the UK and in Paris as a young model, it was very, very stressful, and my inner conscience, inner being, every time I got really, really scared or really, really nervous, it's the funniest thing. My spirit or my ancestors would tell me, sing. And when I sang, I didn't sing to myself, I sang out. And the crazy thing was, I was trying to get away from people, but I realized my voice drew them to me. So that I always had to deal with that, because I was singing to soothe myself because I was nervous and anxious and around people. And then I open my mouth, and then there's a crowd, and I'm like, this is horrible. You know, like even to this day, you know, a lot of people are like, Queen, why don't you perform? And I'm like, honey, because it gives me anxiety in ways you would just never believe.
So many artists, so many mainstream famous front and center artists. You'd be surprised, from Barbra Streisand to Brandy to Beyonce has talked about it. Even in the classical world, I love the book, The Making of a Voice, I think it's called, by Renee Fleming, one of the top sopranos ever to come out of this country. She talks about how in the beginning of her career, she hated it. She had to learn she had to fake her way into authentically getting comfortable. But you won't believe how many times I hear from singers, y'all know, we're either here in my home studio or through the computer, through Zoom, FaceTime, whatever, like, Eric, why am I doing this if it makes me feel this way? Because there's so much anxiety. Because there's a sensitivity and the urge that we have to express ourselves. Yeah. It's kind of a two-way mirror, in that it's a vulnerability that is magical,
Yeah.
And we need it. It literally lowers blood pressure. It literally regulates the nervous system. It's healing. It literally has objectively proven healing qualities. But it also is like that light attracts the moss to your flame. It's like, oh wait, So it's this weird, the sensitivity that people find so attractive. And I don't just mean like sexually, romantically, as a human, on a human level. We also are like, wait, I don't want all this attention on me. So it's funny that so many artists have that. So just, I know you know this, but for other people watching, you're not alone in that. There's nothing wrong with you. There's so many people. One of my favorite singers, Eva Cassidy, who became famous kind of posthumously. She died of cancer in her 30s, unfortunately. She used to keep her head, incredible voice, incredible. She would do whole shows at Blues Alley with her head down the whole time.
Yeah.
Over the rainbow way up high. And just, and she's just blaring out, but just playing the guitar and looking scared and these incredible tones. But she just, it's funny, but it's a thing. But what I advise artists to do is to seek refuge in the character, or to your point, I think part of what scares singers these days, especially with social media, because there's this subtext of competition, because everything is quantified readily to our face. I can see like, oh, you got millions of followers, and I don't. Like, what do I do? I need to do what she's doing. Do I need to do what she's doing? I need to do, and so we do that, and it takes us out of our power and out of our magic. So, when Melissa did that, okay, so is that how I'm supposed to sing? Or like, if we can operate from, so when we think like that, we're putting ourselves in the anxiety riddled place of like fight flight, because it's like, okay, I have to earn your love, you're judging me, which the body views as a threat, as a physical threat. Like, okay, I'm presenting myself for judgment, I hope you like this. But if I'm operating from a place of, I want to share this with you. Yeah. That's a very different energy. Yeah. And not only is it freeing for you, but the audience who's kind of in this symbiotic kind of moment with you, they can go, oh, if he can relax, I can relax. They're taking their cue from you a lot of times. Like, you're a sorcerer, really. And that when you're singing, it sometimes we're
actually am, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah,
you talk to the right one. Don't even get But sometimes we don't want to own that. But I think great singers are mediums, and people are looking to us to channel the emotions that they feel like they don't have the capacity to. They want to feel. They don't want you to. And they're on your side. They don't necessarily want you to give them perfect. I hear perfect vocals all the time, and a lot of times what I'm very proud of is my students pay their bills with their voice. Yeah. My students is the lead in the Nickelodeon show. My students is the band leader. My students is the lead in the Broadway show. Or even if they're not the lead, they get steady work, in the show. And part of the magic that I know and how my students get so consistently booked is that sometimes we have to break the voice a little bit. And what I mean is, it can't always be, this perfect singing like this, and I'm right on the note, and this is here. Sometimes you gotta, and it's not that we need to be like to hurt ourselves, but I'll tell a student like, hey, where are you in this? Yeah. Share your spirit. And as I talk a lot about cowardice and bravery, like, you have to be willing to give a little piece of yourself. And to share it, you don't have to give everything away, but to share some of your spirit, because people will suck you dry if you let them. But especially in this industry, but you have to be willing to share a little bit. And I've seen it happen over and over again as someone who wasn't naturally gifted, who started getting booked over all these other people. I realized, I tell the story a lot of my first classical audition, how it was for 2 years I was a professional classical singer. I did a lot of work. I found it artistically stifling, but I was quite successful in it. Yeah. And I remember my first audition. In the classical auditions, you could hear everybody because it's opera. Yeah. So I could hear all the guys, and I realized as I was hearing them, I was like, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get this.
Right.
And I knew it because everybody was trying to show how big their voice was, how powerful their voice was. And I realized nobody was telling the story. And non can drive, you're kind of making fun of a nerd, basically. And I was the only one who was, non can drive, amoroso, no te chon, non te chon. I was the only one who was, I was like, I'm gonna, and I got it. Yeah. And I continued to book over other people. And I was like, they have incredible instruments. But until they had the paradigm shift, and I experienced the same thing with my R&B, I had fallings out with friends who were like, who loved me when I was like the struggling one. Yeah. But once I clocked this secret of like imbuing my voice with me, with my spirit, yeah. Then I started to get booked for everything. And I was like, wow, I did a lot of work with Noah Silver, yeah, who unfortunately passed a few years ago. But with him, I did a lot of work for like things for Showtime, MTV. You might hear my ooze in an episode of Teen Mom. You know, right? You're out there. Sometimes you're literally just singing vibes. You know, yeah. You know, whatever. But there were times where, and normally I'm not like this, but there were times where I had to ask, like, why did you pick me? Like, why not Nick, who has this incredibly powerful voice, and why not Michael? Like, why? Like, he has so much range. Like, why'd you pick me? And it was like, well, we're getting paid to manipulate the emotions of the audience or to guide them in how they're supposed to feel. Mm-hmm. The audience doesn't give a damn about how perfect the voice is. Yeah. Can they feel you or not? And the directors, especially working with so many film directors lately, they're very specific on, I need this vibe. I need this feeling. I need this feeling. Like I said with Jennifer, her voice is gorgeous. But we don't need gorgeous right now. We need broken down and falling apart. That's what we need right now. And so for this moment. And so part of what liberated me as a performer was, if I had to go up there as Eric and if I had to be perfect and do the run perfectly and do notes perfectly, that's terrifying. But if I had to come up as a human telling a story to another human, like, let me share this with you. It's not for you to like or dislike. This is just the truth, or my truth at least. This is I was dreaming of the past when my heart was beating fast. I'm just telling you, like, I'm not trying to. I was dreaming of the. I'm not trying to give you perfect breath.
Right. Because then the audience knows the difference, because then they look at you and they're like, okay. Because the
audience knows the difference. Yeah, they know. I try to tell people, we're not singing for other singers. So it's easy, especially with social media, to get caught up in this vocal Olympics, and we have the They Got Range, and I love those kind of pages. It's because we as vocalists, we understand when I hear you do high notes and I hear your upper register, I know how impressive that is athletically. Yeah. Regular people don't care about that part of it.
They don't.
They just care, can I feel it or not? And I think sometimes vocalists, we get so caught up. Like, I have students who are like, well, give me that kind of range. I'm like, that's not what it's about. Like, yeah, we want you healthy and strong and flexible, but it's not about being the next Ariana Grande. You can do it all day, and nobody will care because we already have Ariana. She's doing her. Where are you?